Nuclear launch detected. 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 Nuclear under attack. Energy and critical research and structure. Energy and critical energy and structure.
Fantasy versus Modesty. This is Group D. Oh, that wasn't even intentional. Excellent. I love rhyming unintentionally. But the third STX guy, and wow, the other two STX guys have won today. So maybe Modesty can go for the trifecta. And speaking of trifecta, I just realized that the first two games I talked about P. So I need to go for the trifecta here. Okay, here we go, guys. Okay, I really hate it when people are talking to me while I'm peeing in the men's room. And that's all I gotta say about that. Okay, trifecta complete. And we're on to this game, Terran versus Zerg. This is Modesty's first round of 16 ever. He's not the newest player in the world. He's been around playing some Pro League games. And I remember... Actually, the one game I remember Modesty for most is his game against Stork on Andromeda and the Pro League. And he had the game won. He had it so won. And he still lost. And because Stork, he was so far behind, he decided to put down 2 more forges. So he had 3 forges spinning. And that completely took Modesty off guard. Except, down at the 6 o'clock position in yellow is Fantasy. Fantasy. And that means over at the 3 o'clock position is Modesty. Wow, that could get old quick. Let's get some predictions from the Nuka Knights. Here's an interesting one from DD Guevara. Writes, Effort will win because he didn't retire. It was all a ruse to fool the other players. He is actually Modesty. Look closer at his hair. It's fake. I'm going to have to do that soon. I like that one. Here's another good one from Funny Banana Man 94. Writes, Fantasy will win more games in his group than Saddam Hussein has hairs on his back. That is my prediction. Okay, so 3 hairs on his back. No, wait, more hairs than hairs on his back. So he'd have Saddam Hussein has 2 hairs on his back. Yeah, you're not making a lot of sense there, Nanner. Let's move on to another prediction from HoloFizz writes, Fantasy, go, 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 go. Heart symbol, heart symbol, heart symbol. Yeah, I'm one of those guys that supports him and always gets disappointed. Well, at least you're honest about it. There's a question down at the bottom of the map. SKT1 Fantasy. Do you like fantasy? Please vote yes or no on your little score sheet, and we'll count it up at the end of the game. Okay, here's another one from KT Flash 96 writes, I want to see Fantasy. Let's start over on that one. I want to see Fantasy get yet another silver! 3 exclamation points. I think some people are saying that about Stork too in the comments section. Oh, I gotta love the silver guys. But the good thing about silver guys is they eventually get a gold. And I have a feeling that Fantasy will eventually, someday, maybe 20 years in the future, he will get a gold in the OSL. Of course, 20 years in the future, nobody will be watching at that point. There'll be 2 Korean chicks in the audience. And they'll all have beards. Yeah, the chicks will have beards, too. I don't know what I'm saying. But, yeah. That's when Fantasy will get his first gold. He might do it this season. I don't know. If he does win this season, you can come back to this video and laugh at me. And I will do a video of Fantasy with a beard, and then his fangirls with also beards cheering for him. But, alright, Fantasy. Surprisingly, not going for an early gas. That's what I know Fantasy for is just going for early gas weird strategies. He went for a weird strategy recently. I saw a Pro League game with him against a Zerg. Don't really want to spoil that game completely, so I won't say who the Zerg is, but he went for a strategy. By the way, Fantasy's on a ridiculous tear right now. About 10, 11 wins in a row. Something freaking ridiculous like that. But he went for a strategy. He went for a fake mech build, which he stopped Marine production and blocked his front to make it look like he was going for mech, and he put down an early refinery too, but yeah, he went straight into medic and marine from that. and almost completely took the Zerg player off guard. Luckily, the Zerg player adapted to that earlier, but Fantasy still played fantastically in that game. Fantasy's late game versus Zerg is so awesome to watch. His late game is better than most other Terran players' late game, except maybe Flash. Because some players like Zero and some other players, they're very, very good early, the mid game, but for some reason in late game, I think Cal's a bit like this too. The late game, they just completely screw themselves over. They just can't adapt to the amount of multitasking they need to get the late game done. Alright, I think Fantasy finally going to lose his scouting SEV. And he is going for more barracks here. Very standard build from Fantasy, which is definitely not what I expect. But that could be his plan, going for something expected, which is not expected of Fantasy. There's the Academy for Fantasy going straight into Medic Marine, but he's not pumping any more Marines. So I think he's just going straight into those Medics soon. But another Extractor and a Spire as the third hatchery just now coming down. But this is basically starting out with some 2-hatch Muta. I think Spire's going to be up before... Well, no, Modesty will be able to pump some mutas from that third hatchery, but most he just now put down that hatchery, so he's not going to be using that for production very soon. This is a strange build from Modesty. He's going for a very aggressive muta opening, and then hoping he gets enough damage done with that muta opening to make it so that Fantasy can't move out and take his third base. I see what he's doing here, and it's going to work out great if it does work out. If he can get some damage to stop Fantasy from moving out, get some Marine kills and whatnot. But Fantasy is coming in with another SCV. He's going to try to get the scout on this. He's got to be very quick about it. Once he comes in, the Spire is going to be done just about now, and Fantasy is actually not going in for the scout. He's looking for the third base instead. I'm not even sure if he scanned anything. I know he has his Academy, but I don't know if he has scanned yet. But Fantasy just now getting scanned up, so he is going to scan both the bases, the natural and the main at the same time, and be able to see what's going on. And getting a bunker to help himself defend this. So I think he did scan the Spire, and there's some praying fans in the audience. Fantasy, I know you can do it. Fantasy. Okay, whatever. But some more turrets for Fantasy. He's building turrets next to his bases, trying to get that anti-muta going. Whoa, a little bit too late on that turret at the top. Fantasy going to have to force to cancel that, I think. Running in with his Marines, but almost without medic support. 2 medics lagging far behind. But he's got to keep behind that base and build some more turrets, a lot more turrets actually, to fight off Modesty, because Modesty is going to go very heavy on the mutas, already pumping more. I think he cut some drone production, especially to get these mutas on. He's basically going for 2-hatch muta, but he threw in an extra hatch just for the hell of it. He's not going to be pumping much from it. But he will have that to fall back on if he causes enough damage to keep Fantasy inside of his bases. It's alright, gripping up more Mutalisk, and he's going in yet again. And Fantasy is wise to this, building a third turret behind his main minerals. But he's going to have to get back there and protect these turrets. Second turret going to go down soon. He is coming in with his Marines at the same time. And this is strange. I would have thought that Fantasy would have more Marines out there by now. But, chasing down. Both of the medics go down. This is horrible for Fantasy. He needs his medics right now. And he hasn't pumped any additional ones, so his Marines are just going to die horribly, and Modesty knows that. He's just hovering around here looking for more Marines to kill, trying to stay out of the turret fire, of course, but he can cause so much damage here. If he takes out the Marines, this could be it for Fantasy. Losing the medics like that is horrible, absolutely horrible. But now 2 more medics, and Modesty's going to have to back off yet again, but he's caused so much damage there, sniping the SCVs inside of the main, and he's just going to keep pumping Mutalisk. Look at this, tons of Mutalisk. From Modesty, and he did cut his drone production pretty significantly. But is he mining from that third base? Not exactly sure if he was mining from that or not. He is mining from it a little bit, but he does definitely cut that drone production to get out the amount of Mutalisk he has right now. But it looks like he's working out fantastically for him now. Sniping those 2 medics, that was so bad for Fantasy. Can't let that happen again. Loses another medic. As soon as I say that, I'm jinxing Fantasy. I should keep my mouth closed. Of course, that's not very good for a commentator, but more turrets coming up. This is exactly what Fantasy needs, though. He needs to build turrets out the wazoo, because this is all that Modesty is going to go for. This is how he's going to try to win this game, just Mutalisk alone. is how he's going to try to get it done. So the more turrets, the better, Fantasy. Build them everywhere. Everywhere! He loses his entire line of turrets at the back. Almost loses that one. Does lose it. Modesty does snipe that, and he's sniping most of the Marines that are back here too. Not sure what Fantasy is up to. He's just separating all of his Marines. Now he has some Marines near the back. No more turrets at the back, though. And Modesty is going for that engineering bay. Is it upgrading? I think it might have been upgrading. I'm not sure if Fantasy has the +1 attack or not. I would be surprised if he does. But losing more here. +1 carapace, actually, for Modesty. Coming in there, losing quite a few Mutalisks, though. But he is committed to this. Completely committed. And with that +1 carapace upgrade, yeah, he is completely committed to all Mutalisks to fight back Fantasy. It looks like it is working out great. Another engineering bay coming up for Fantasy. And he's building a starport behind the natural expansion minerals. But it could be a little bit too late. Not sure what he's going to do with this starport. Maybe get out Wraiths. I don't even think Wraiths are viable. He's going to have to go for Valkyries or something to fight this back. Of course, if he can somehow get a grouping of Valkyries out without them being scourged off the face of the earth, he will be able to fight this back. But he's taken so many losses. Fantasy just didn't get the amount of barracks down earlier than he needed. And didn't get the scout on this build from Modesty, although he's done a pretty good job keeping up the turrets to fight this off. But look at this, almost no mining at all inside of this main. And that's going to spell doom for Fantasy if he can't do this with the Valkyries. He is going for Valkyries, building the control tower on that starport. This is a bit ridiculous. But Modesty is going to notice this soon enough. He's going to fly over there and notice that and know to come in with Scourge. So I think that Fantasy, his number might be up here. He might be dead as a doornail. But look at the amount of turrets it's hovering above the... right next to the barracks. It's a bit ridiculous. And hardly anything next to this natural expansion. And now Modesty, he sees that the starport is pumping, so he's going to know that that's a Valkyrie. He might actually stay in here and try to snipe it with Mutas. Nope, deciding to fly away. He's going to pump some Scourge, though. Probably take that out. Modesty keeping in, flying to a huge turret trap, though. Huge turret trap for Modesty, but he probably has some back... yeah, he has plenty of backup Mutas to supplement the injured Mutas. So he's going to be just fine. He can keep the injured Mutas actually by one of his other bases while they regenerate health. But there's Fantasy finally doing some scanning, a little bit more scouting to figure out what he's up against. And Modesty is actually transitioning. He just put down his Hydralist in, so he's probably going to go straight into Lurkers. There's the first Valkyrie, but only one Valkyrie. Valkyries are extremely powerful against grouping of Mutalisks because they do the splash damage. And splash damage against Mutalisks is just awesome. Even more damage than a Corsair. Of course, Corsairs don't do that much damage. Well, together they do. But Valkyries are very expensive, but definitely worth it against an all-Mutalisk build. And now Fantasy, if he gets a grouping about two or three Valkyries, he'll be able to defend against this just fine. But Modesty is actually playing smart. He is switching at just the right time. As soon as he saw the Valkyries were on the way, he's like, okay, I should probably get away from Mutalisks. So he's switching now, putting down the Evolution Chamber to end the Queen's Nest. There are the Lurkers. So Fantasy, it's going to be forever before he can take his third base. I think that is the main part of this game. Fantasy is not going to be able to take his third base, and that's going to hurt him a lot as he's trying to move out. He has a few medics to support those Marines, and he might even fall into a Lurker trap soon because the Lurkers are going to pop out of those eggs very soon. And Fantasy is working his way up. He might have actually scanned, though, to figure out that there are Lurkers here. But Fantasy falling into Lurkers, doing the scan, though, to get rid of the Lurkers. And he does have the Valkyries in tow, so he's actually fighting back the Mutalisks. Those Mutalisks aren't going to be able to get much done now, so the Lurkers are going to have to do this. Yeah, Modesty, it was very smart of him to switch into Lurkers, because without Lurkers right now, if he had switched, if he would have kept at all Mutalisks, he would be dead right now, completely dead. But he switched into Lurkers. It's going to help him protect his 5 o'clock base just fine. Going in with Mutalisks at the same time as Mutalisks are going to die from the splash damage. The Valkyries fighting them back, but the Lurkers getting a ton of damage done in the same time. It is not looking good for Fantasy. Fantasy's chances are very slim from this point. But of course, Modesty is not going for a 4th base or anything. He is going straight into Defiler Tech, is my guess anyway. putting down the Queen's Nest as he is. I think if he was going for Ultralisk or something, he would have more bases down at the moment. But yeah, he's just sticking to the 3 bases. So that could work out for Fan. What is going on here? Is this a slow drop? Modesty going for a slow drop behind the main with 5 overlords filled with God knows what. Probably some lurkers in there, I'm sure. Oh, weird. Slow drop strategy from Modesty, and this Fantasy's not going to scout it until it's way too late. Way too late. He's just saturated everything too. But there come the lurkers. Fantasy is so screwed. Oh, he doesn't even pull his SCVs away. Oh, everything dies inside the main. Oh, things are going horrible for Fantasy. Plus, he's going to lose another scam. But he did get a drop at that 5 o'clock base from Modesty, so that's some damage. But he just lost his main. That is too much damage to take. Plus, the Lurker's going to be able to clean this up. And the Mutalisks are still alive somehow. A couple of Scourge out to help against the Valkyries. But actually, Hydralisks and Zerglings are going to help clean this up. When Hydralisks are taking down Marines, that's when you know things aren't looking too great. But the Hydralisk, you might actually transition into a Hydra Lurker with Defilers to get the Dark Swarm or something. But oh man, Fantasy! Losing half of his army in the middle. Wasn't quite paying attention, and I think that's going to be it. Wow, talk about the hammer blow falling down on Fantasy. He loses his main, forced to lift off all of his buildings, loses his entire army basically in the middle of the map to sneak attack Lurkers. And Modesty just completely destroying Fantasy right now. Not even funny. And well, Fantasy's streak of winning is definitely over now. What was that, 10 or 11 games? He was on a roll too. I'm surprised he crumpled this easily, but that's what happens when you go for weird builds all the time. I mean, it's great to go for unpredictable strategies, as Fantasy does a lot, but it's kind of ridiculous to keep going for them over and over and over. Those kind of tech builds, strange builds that Fantasy likes to go for, Valkyrie type of builds, because you're just a little bit too predictable if you do that. But alright, Fantasy still not GGing for God knows why. I have no idea why he hasn't GG'd yet. Dark Swarm, Fantasy, trying to do some dropship micro to, wow, what is he doing? I have no idea what Fantasy is doing right now. What is he hoping to accomplish? Trying to kill some drones, and everything's on fire. It's just like a Terminator movie, honestly. It's explosions everywhere, giant mechs marching down, destroying everything, in the form of Zerglings, of course. GG from Fantasy, and Modesty takes it. Who would have thought Modesty would take the first game of this group, but he played great. All the STX guys, every single STX guy won today. Nicely done. Nicely done, nicely done. Although that was kind of a spoiler for people who didn't watch the other 2 games, but whatever. It's still awesome. I got to point it out. So I'm sure those guys are going to have some beers later and celebrate. But this has been Nuke. I will be back soon for more commentaries.